I don't know what cloud your judgment worse. Your guilt or your antiquated sense of morality. Bruce, I forgive you for not saving me. But why? Why on God's earth is he still alive?
Welcome back to Thinking Critical. This is Wes, and today it's time for a comic book review. I'm going to be talking about Batman 3 Jokers from Geoff Johns and Jason Fabok that was just released on DC Black Label. Now, this comic book has been like 4 or 5 years in the making. The concept behind the 3 Jokers was introduced in Geoff Johns and Jason Fabok's Darkseid War back in the New 52 days. It was revisited during DC Rebirth, certainly hinted at that this was going to be explored. Never really got to happen during the Rebirth era, but it's here now with much fanfare and hype behind it. And I got to say this, bottom line up front, this definitely lives up to the hype. This is a 5-star comic book. Basically everything in this works. The art is fantastic. The characterization is pitch perfect. The pacing and plot are all just superb. Everything about this comic book is nearly perfect. I really enjoyed this a lot. And before we get into all the details of why I enjoyed it so much, I do want to say, if you're just visiting the channel, or if you've been coming around but haven't subscribed, there's not a better time than today to subscribe to Thinking Critical YouTube. Hit the bell for notifications. Give this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the review. Give it a thumbs down and let me know in the comments section below. Either way, love hearing the feedback. And let me know if you want to hear more reviews on the channel. I don't do nearly as many of these as I used to, but I could always do more if that's what the viewers are looking for. Normally in one of my reviews, I would start out with the stuff that I really liked and move my way all the way to the stuff I really didn't like. Not going to be able to do that because there's literally nothing I didn't really like. There's like a thing here or there, maybe. We're talking like the tiniest nitpicks you can imagine. Basically, across the board, this book is spectacular. So I'm going to hit the art, and I'm going to talk about some of the stuff I really liked about this comic book. So getting with the art from Jason Fabok, the first thing you notice right off the bat, and it was quite evident when we saw the original like promo covers for this comic book. It had a logo that was very similar to the Killing Joke logo on past publications. This comic book has a look and feel that is very much in that style. Although I wouldn't say it's kind of like Geoff Johns and Gary Frank's work in Doomsday Clock, which felt like a straight homage and was a sequel to Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen. So it looks like The Killing Joke, but it's definitely not a sequel. It's its own thing, although it definitely does draw some inspiration with some of the characters and events in here. Just looking at this comic book, and I'd say 80% of the comic book is like 9-panel grids, and they just look fantastic. Just the amount of detail that Fabok puts into the comic book is just amazing. And it's almost like what Sean Gordon Murphy did with The White Knight, that first book where there's so many little Easter eggs for longtime Batman readers, where you could see all these little callbacks to past events, past stories that you loved. If you're new to comics, it's not going to distract you or detract from the story. But if you've been following along and you are a Batman fan, you are going to get treated to a ton of visual cues and callbacks to past stories. I think that's really cool. Just look at this art, all the wonderful details here in the Batcave. You got all these great costumes of not only the Bat family, but his adversaries in the past, other war trophies that Batman would have picked up along the way. Really cool stuff. And the colors from Brad Anderson, he definitely knocks it out of the park here. He and Jason Fabok are definitely on the same page with Geoff Johns, just executing his vision to a T. And you can definitely tell that Jason Fabok got the time he needed to execute this comic book to a standard that is higher than anything I've ever seen Jason Fabok on. And I think his art has always been spectacular. So for him to take it up another level here is just, woo! The art alone is probably worth the $7 that it costs to get this premium Prestige Plus Black Label comic. Larger format, better quality paper, better quality cover. Everything across the board on this comic book, just as far as presentation, is top-notch. Now, getting into Jason Fabok's use of the 9-panel grids here, it's absolutely phenomenal. I'll say people are going to be mad at me, but I'll say it. I think he utilizes this technique even better than Gary Frank did in Doomsday Clock, which I thought was fantastic. I mean, we're talking high-level execution as far as the visual design of this comic book. You can see here, this is one of my favorite scenes in the comic book. There's an ambulance taking one of the survivors of a Joker attack. We've got Batman and Batgirl escorting this ambulance through. A lot of tension being built up here. You can see in the top 3 panels, really effective in conveying motion across the panels. Then in the bottom 6 panels, we get close up of the characters. You can see their expressions on their faces. You can see what's happened to this man that's been infected by the Joker virus, as somebody, who knows who it is attacking him in the ambulance. And I think Jason Fabok really used the 9-panel grids to their fullest. A lot of people try to use this technique, which was perfected back in the 80s in the pages of a lot of Alan Moore comic books, a lot of the classics that he did. Gary Franks in Doomsday Clock and Jason Fabok here in The Three Jokers are absolutely very successful. They use it to its fullest, and kudos to Jason Fabok and Brad Anderson. They really brought it in this one. Like, we know that the entire comic book story is complete. There's 2 more issues to this. They didn't want to even release the first issue till it was complete. This is the quality of the art that we can expect through the entire run of this comic book. And I, for one, couldn't be more excited. And I definitely think it was probably smart to delay the release and make sure that it was ready for prime time, because this is a premium price book. It's a premium price product, and you're definitely getting your money's worth from artists Jason Fabok and Brad Anderson. Moving on to the story by Geoff Johns, he did mention that scars and trauma were going to be a big part of this story arc. And we get that right in the beginning. We get introductions to Bruce Wayne Batman, Barbara Gordon Batgirl, and Jason Todd Red Hood. In the beginning, we can all see how they're affected by trauma. And Bruce Wayne, there's this really effective montage, scene after scene of his foes inflicting these terrible wounds on him. You can see he's just scarred to hell. He's got scars everywhere. He's got scars from Catwoman, Riddler, Bane, Killer Croc, the Joker. Everybody's put scars on this guy, and it really removes that fake veil of invincibility that Batman has. He is a man. He can be hurt, and he is filled head to toe with scars that his Batman costume covers while he's out fighting crime, and his Bruce Wayne costume covers when he's out there portraying a billionaire playboy. The same thing with Barbara Gordon. She's taking a shower. You can see the bullet wound she took to the abdomen that paralyzed her. In Alan Moore's very classic The Killing Joke, that this comic draws a lot of inspiration from as far as visually and some of the story details. Then last but not least, we've got Jason Todd being beaten nearly to death. You can see the scar on the back of his head where Joker tried to break his head open, with a crowbar before he blew him up. And it's really interesting when you think about these 3 characters that have all been very heavily traumatized by the Joker throughout their life. Barbara Gordon, obviously, during The Killing Joke, she was paralyzed. She took that trauma and she did it. She handled it the best. Yes, she was paralyzed, but she became Oracle. In many ways, she became more powerful than she ever was as Batgirl at her physical peak. When she became Oracle, she used her mind. She's not faltered under the pain and wounds that the Joker put on her. She took that and she used it as inspiration and became an even more powerful character. That trauma is still with her. You can see that here visually in this scene. We juxtapose that to Jason Todd, who took his pain, took his trauma, and took it in a different direction. He didn't really use it to become a more powerful character. He became very vengeful, very spiteful. He turned on his mentor, Bruce Wayne Batman, because he didn't approve of the way that he was fighting crime anymore, because in his mind, Batman was the reason Joker killed him. In many ways, that's actually correct. Jason Todd, Robin, would have never been beaten to death with the crowbar and then blown up if he wasn't associated with Batman. And you could say the same thing with Barbara Gordon. If her father, Jim Gordon, wasn't aiding Batman as a commissioner of the police force, she never would have been targeted by the Joker for this heinous attack that obviously left her paralyzed and changed for life and scarred internally. So in a way, Batman has to deal with all this trauma as well. Not only the physical and emotional stuff he's been through. Obviously, his parents are dead. You can see all the battles he's been through. But he's directly responsible for the things that have happened to Jason Todd, to Barbara Gordon, to Dick Grayson, to Damian Wayne, to Alfred, to everybody that's been in his family and been attacked just because they're associated with Batman or Bruce Wayne. And you can imagine it's probably a heavy burden to bear. And I believe we'll probably explore this even further as we go through this comic book. Although Jason Todd definitely in this comic, by the end of it, and we'll talk about it later, gets his moment to face the Joker and have a conversation with him. And it's easily the best moment of this entire comic book. We are going to get there. That's the last thing that I'm actually going to talk about. Another thing that I think is absolutely fantastic is the mystery element of this. Yes, the comic book does open up, and we are reminded of all the scars that these characters are holding that have been put on them because of their superhero lifestyle and being associated with Batman. But all of Gotham are basically clued in that there might be 3 Jokers because 3 simultaneous crimes happen in 3 different areas by the Joker. All of them have eyewitnesses. One of them's on the internet. One of them is at the Ace Chemical Factory, which is where Joker was created in the first place. And then there's another event in another part of town where Joker basically takes out a member of a crime family, the Moxon crime family. And speaking of the Moxon crime family, I guess there are probably questions about whether this is in continuity or not. I don't think it can be. We are seeing the Jason Todd Red Hood costume from back in the day. We're seeing different versions of costumes. Alfred is in this comic book. He's still alive. When you read the current continuity of DC Comics, it does not appear that there are 3 Jokers. We're only seeing 1 Joker. So this definitely feels like an Elseworld story to me. But speaking of the Moxon family, they do try to change Bruce's origin a little bit. Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok do revisit the day that Bruce Wayne's parents died, which I think was probably unnecessary. We've seen it ad nauseum over the years to keep going back to that. But they did change a little bit where it is insinuated on a TV broadcast that it was believed that the Moxon crime family had basically orchestrated the attack on the Waynes and the murder, and that Joe Chill was like the fall guy. And he went in there and he took the fall for the Moxon crime family. That was interesting. And I imagine that will also be explored in the future of this comic book story. We do have 2 more issues. But the mystery is great. Like I said, there's events, and they all kind of call back. Obviously, you can see there up in the top right panel, that is straight out of The Killing Joke. And all 3 crimes that are committed by the Joker simultaneously are from past events in Batman lore. Now, I think that's really cool. And we know that Joker had a vat of chemicals. That's what he dipped these 3 guys in. That's where the survivor came in that's in the ambulance that we already showed you earlier. And he's taken that chemical where they don't know exactly what it is, but it's thought that it can create new Jokers possibly. Certainly falls in line with a lot of past Joker schemes where he wants to infect everyone and make them smile kind of thing. But the mysteries is just a great way to do this. Batman should be the world's greatest detective. I'm glad a mystery, a detective story, is the framework of this story where we're exploring the scars, seen and unseen, that the Bat family have. That's obviously what the comic book is about, but this is the framework in which that they're going to explore it with. And I'm glad it's a detective story. That's the way it should be. Batman is not portrayed as a great detective nearly often enough nowadays for my taste. So I'm glad that's the route that Jeff Johns took in delivering this story. Now, moving on to the 3 Jokers, it turns out they have a secret hideout and they are interacting with each other. One of them's the criminal, one of them is the comedian, and one of them is the clown. And it's quite clear that the criminal is actually the one in charge of these 3 Jokers, and they have a plan hatching. It feels like they're absolutely playing Bruce Wayne, Barbara Gordon, and Jason Todd like a fiddle. They're moving them around everywhere they want to. They have big plans in mind. I kind of like the way that they're portrayed here. The interactions between the 3 aren't weird. Well, they're a little strange, but it feels very much in character if you had these 3 Jokers talking to each other. They all have unique personalities. There are definitely some similarities physically, but they change just enough. Like, you can tell which Joker is which Joker, and I think it's really effective. I think it's cool that we got to see them all together in one place. It's quite clear that they are working together, probably have been for some time, and it's almost insinuated in the story that they might be looking to create even more Jokers. Maybe there will be 6 Jokers by the end of this. It was really neat. I like the way it was executed. I think Jeff Johns did a really good job. And one of the elements of the story that I thought would be the hardest to pull off, but he really did it seamlessly. Now, kind of getting into the action, this is one of the scenes that was set up. We saw it in the teaser art that was released where you had all these fish in an aquarium that had Joker smiles on them. It's a really cool scene. Probably my second favorite scene of the whole comic book to the one that we're going to talk about after this. And it's basically Batman, Jason Todd, Barbara Gordon all decided to work together because they've been trying to run down the Joker since he escaped from Arkham Asylum about a week before this. And Jason Todd has been on the trail, and this is where his clues he found led him to, and the 3 of them are working together. I like that they're working together. Bruce isn't trying to be like, oh, I'll go it alone. He's accepting help here. He's realizing that the 3 of them need to work together because it appears that there are 3 Jokers, and they get there, and there's like a little troll named Gabby, I think his name is, Gabby, and he's got a team of henchmen, and they got funny names like Pow and Wham, and And they're all the silly sound effects you would have heard from a 1960s like Batman on Nickelodeon, or probably in the comic books as well. And it's a really cool action scene. It's really well done. It's a lot of fun. I expected this to be very character focused, very character intensive, probably a lot of dialogue, a lot of exposition. But we get a couple of really, really good action scenes. The one in the ambulance is a really good action scene, and this one here is a really good action scene. I'm glad Jeff Johns was able to incorporate some of that into this and not just make it conversation. And yes, he is doing detective work, which I'm glad he is doing. The three of them are working together, but they are also kicking ass and taking names along the way, and it's very, very much enjoyable. But I can't talk about anything else anymore. I got to get to this last panel, and this is without a doubt this is the end of the comic. The interaction between Clown Joker and Jason Todd is very haunting. The way that he talks to Jason Todd, and he kind of manipulates him with this conversation as they have him strapped to a chair. He's tied up. They're interrogating him. Batman has had to leave because the Gotham PD have a second Joker in their sights. And they're having a back and forth, and Jason Todd's kind of like, you didn't kill me, you only made me stronger. And this is what Joker has to say. Because I wanted to leave you alive. I mean, if I outright kill you, well, then there's no more opportunity to hurt you and in turn, him. Because he's all that matters, not you, never you. Do you recall what you said to me while I was breaking your head in with that crowbar? As your blood streamed down your eyes and your skull cracked? Jason Todd says, "Shut up." Joker continues, "Because I cherish those words. I'll always cherish them. Please stop. Please. If you let me live, I'll do anything you say. I'll be your Robin." And then after that, he cackles and laughs, and he says, "And look at you now, my little Red Hood, shooting up people and making Batman's life miserable. You are my Robin." This totally flips the script on Jason Todd. He obviously wasn't expecting this. He thought he was in control, and I think he's realizing at that moment that he isn't in control. He was never in control. He's been used basically his entire adult life. He's been used to get back at Batman because that's what Joker wanted him to do. Or at least that's what Joker wants him to think. It's a really, really eerie moment. Just a very good callback and a very, very good payoff to an event that was started so many years ago, obviously in Death in the Family, under the Red Hood. In many ways, in my opinion, the way when I walk away from this comic book, I feel like this is probably a Jason Todd story more than anything. At least this issue. He certainly has the most meaningful character interactions and actions period in this comic book. I don't want to give everything away, but it's very powerful stuff and very well executed. And there's not much more I want to say about that. Because I'm gonna end up giving too much away. But that is basically my review of Batman 3 Jokers. Like I said, this is essentially a flawless comic book. The dialogue is spectacular. The pacing is right on. So many payoffs to past events. So many call-outs to past events. The art is just phenomenal. It's fantastic. It's perfection. If you're a comic book fan and you're going to the store every Wednesday or Tuesday, I guess now that DC's a Tuesday, DC's new comics come out on Tuesday. This is what you're looking for. This has the makings of an all-time classic story. Will it be, when it's all over? I don't know, but this is, this is the beginning of something like that. You can clearly see Jeff Johns on the top of his game, Jason Fabok on the top of his game, Brad Anderson on the top of his game, dealing with some of the classic characters in DC Comics lore, the most popular hero and hero family in DC Comics, the most popular villain. There's three of them in this one in the Joker. The Joker is a little bit played out right now, way overexposed for my taste. But if you're going to do a Jeff Johns, Jason Fabok, 3 Jokers story, obviously I'm going to be in on that. I do make exceptions, and even if Joker is too played out right now, I definitely have room for this because the expectations couldn't have been higher for this comic book. The build-up is, we're talking 4 or 5 years of build-up, all the hype that you got, the good feelings from Rebirth and everything. That is a big weight on the top of Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok, and they absolutely passes with flying colors. Like this is as good as it gets, man. This is a perfect comic book. This is amazing. If you haven't read this, I didn't spoil everything. I did the best that I could to leave some of the really cool stuff still out there waiting to be discovered if you decide to go out and read this. But yeah, this is great. If you like comic books, you need to go read this.